Hey, pool chasers. Have you ever had a client that wanted you to take care of their hot tub as well as their pool? I remember the first one that we took on. It seemed like a no brainer at first, but as we serviced it week to week, we quickly realized that it was quite different than a pool. Sure, it's still water chemistry, but it's a much smaller body of water, so things can change more rapidly and can get out of hand quickly. This caused us to hold off on servicing more of them. But as you'll hear on the episode, we learned that there was a ton of revenue to be made in the space when they are taken care of properly, drained frequently, and the filters are cleaned and replaced often. Our guest today has over 30 years experience in the hot tub industry. He shares some fundamentals and best practices on how to service and upsell to make the most out of the hot tubs on your route. We promise you'll never look at hot tubs the same. Please enjoy episode 120 with Robert Stuart.
Welcome to your go-to podcast for the pool and spa industry. My name is Tyler Rasmussen.
And my name is Greg Villafania. And this is the Pool Chasers Podcast. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Robert. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us on the show today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for inviting me.
So we're doing these via Zoom call. Can you share with the listeners where you're at? Because it looks pretty awesome back there in the background.
I am in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and for everybody who's thinking of moving out here, we typically have 10 foot of snow and horrible blizzards, and you don't want to be here.
That's not what it looks like right now.
You're saying don't move
that's
here.
A backdrop picture. I have a mural behind me.
Oh, it's too funny. So let's jump into this. How did you get into the pool and hot tub industry?
So I started out in life. My goal was to be a heavy equipment operator, and I excelled at my ASVAB test, which is the SAT for the military. And they actually made me take it twice because they thought I cheated the first time, and found out that it was the highest score they'd seen in years the second time that I took it. And so they made me go into a technical school and go nuke. And they had an opening for a school that was a pretty elite school. It was nuclear metrology. Nuclear metrology was calibration of instrumentation. I actually worked on gauges and instruments for submarines and submarine consoles. I tell people that I fixed and calibrated altimeters on submarines. That's because they needed it when they jumped out of the water. No, it was the second phase of depth gauge is what it was. Pretty intense schools, clear down to physics. And when I got out, well, at E4, about my second year into it, I had worked my way out of a job. And so I went into a security detail and wound up in a support team for special teams, taught a little SEER school and did some other things, SEER survival and rescue school. And so when I got out, I went to work for Senator Olmsted in Georgia. And working for him, we went down to a fair in Georgia, and I bought a spa. And I had spa experience. When I was a kid in high school, my neighbor had a spa company, and I worked on a few of those. And I've always been a techie. When I was 10, I used to buy old console stereos at garage sales and auctions, or my parents would buy them, and I would rebuild them, repair them, and sell them again. Anything that was electrical or electronic, my mom would buy for me to fix up. When I was 15, they didn't have anything like the clapper or anything else, and my buddy and I built a sound-activated light switch and a sound-activated chess set.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So I've always been pretty techy. So anyhow, I going back to the fair in Georgia, I bought a spa, and they delivered it to my house. It didn't work. They dropped it in the front yard. There was just a lot wrong with it. I didn't want to fix it. I was angry at them. So I started doing research, and you got to understand, we didn't really have Google then. So I did research via phone mostly. Visited a couple spa shops. The fair was a fairly long fair there, and I went back to the fair a couple weeks later, And I had called the company to tell them I wanted my money back, and they said basically no. So I went back to the fair and pretty much embarrassed the salesman in the middle of his show. And I don't know if you've seen spa booths at fairs, but they basically set side by side. And his competitor watched me do that and said, "Wow, who do you work for in the spa industry?" And I said, "I don't. I do private security and I do office machine repair." And he said, "Man, I'd love to hire you." And I said, "Well, I'm moving back to Colorado." And he said, "Well, I'd love to hire you to run the Colorado office." And so I came back and could not talk to anybody in their Colorado office. So I went down the street to shop the competition to see what they had and actually like them better. Went to work for them. And quite frankly, I have always enjoyed just fixing things. And so I spent as much time fixing things as I did selling things as a manager. And I ran into a couple times I had hired techs who I remember sitting down with one and said, "What was the problem with the spa?" And he said it was a flow switch that needed adjusted. But between you and I, they don't know that. So let's charge them for a heater and I'll give you some of my commission on it. And I said, "No, we don't do that. I don't cheat people." And so I basically fired the techs and went back to doing it myself. And the more I did that, I found out I was more one on one with customers and I enjoyed it a whole lot more. I worked in sales and management for years after that, did an awful lot of service, did part time delivery only because usually making the owner of the company angry because he wanted me in the shop and I wanted to be out working in the field. And things kind of blew up with him. And I started a little business out of the back of my truck, maxed out 2 credit cards, bought a spa and a gazebo, used grocery money for a banner, and sold 150,000 in, well, I sold 50,000 the first month and did all the service myself, all the deliveries myself. In the first year, I did 1,300,000. By the third year, we had to move into a bigger store. I think by the 6th year, I was up to 4 million a year in sales out of a single store. And I was running the service department and doing sales, and I was tired. I was really tired. I did that for 15 years. Always took every opportunity I could to get in the field and do service. I went to every service school that I could by every major manufacturer that I could. Some of them enjoyed my input and my personality and even hired me to come back and give input at the factories. I was flown out to California, I was flown to different places to give my input. So in 2014, my wife and I had a major motorcycle wreck. I hit a deer going 50 miles an hour. It hit me in the chest and broke 10 ribs. My
Wow.
wife is a multi-champion fiddle player and landed on her fist and shattered her hand and had 5 surgeries. And
Wow.
while I was in the hospital, I was looking at my security system I made on my iPhone, looking at the cameras and watching my employees talk about me and steal from me basically. And I just had enough. So I shut it down and just became a single tech. I bought a truck for cash and loaded my tools in it and bought a tool camper and started calling customers. A year later, I bought another truck, and a couple years later, I bought another truck. So, and I've necked it down again to just me, and I kind of enjoy that. I'm a little bit of a prima donna. I found something that when I was charging $85 an hour as a tech in my store, people complained and argued about it. When I was doing it as myself and I started charging $125 for a service call, they just figured I was worth it. And and I stopped being as desperate because I didn't have an 18,000 a month bill to keep up with a 15,000 square foot store and 22 employees. And so it, quite frankly, it was nice to turn people down. And when I turned them down, they fought me to stay and my price just kept going up. So I learned that when I charge for what I'm worth, I get it. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I wrote the tech column. Dave Wood approached me with Spa Retailer Magazine. I had approached him a couple times and said a tech column would be great. And several years ago, he approached me and asked me if I'd like to write it. And so I did for, I think, 9 years. I wrote the tech column. It was called the Troubleshooter column. And invariably, my articles, what I started out with, never got on paper because the week I was ready to turn it in, I went out on a service call and said, "Oh my goodness, I got to write about this. This is something with interaction with a customer. I'd have to write about it." And it really turned out good. I mean, it was great input. I got calls from people all over, and I enjoyed it. It's just I was trying to simplify my life after cancer and the motorcycle. Well, I didn't say that. I had cancer too in 2007, and they took out my kidney and a tumor the size of a grapefruit.
Damn.
And so after all that, I just, we were in the middle of Obamonomics, and there was a recession, and we were fighting for insurance, and I just had enough. I just said no. Now I look at everybody and think, wow, I should be back in retail. It's like a disease in spas, at least. I don't know how it is in pools, but in spas, it's like a disease you find you can't get out of it.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And thank you as well for your service to this country. I know you were
Yes.
in the Navy, so thank you very much. We appreciate it. How has being in the military helped in just what you do in hot tubs? Because I think a lot of the military people that we talk to that transfer into either the swimming pool world or the hot tub world, they just seem to be maybe a little bit more organized, or yeah, they just kind of have a different approach to things.
First thing I'll say real quickly is I tell this to everybody. Nobody has to thank me for being in the military. My 10 years in the Navy was some of the best time of my life. I got custody of my daughter in that time and was in a mission-oriented group, and they wanted me to share custody, and I wouldn't. So I got out at the 10-year mark, or I would have stayed in. 1% of the people in the nation have done things I've done, or less, and I promise most of the people that I know haven't sat on the deck of a ship in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle and watched water siphons in a hurricane all around them and just sat in peace and calm out there while chaos was going on around them. So it was a great experience. But I can say military schools, at least the Navy and potentially the Air Force, are some of the best schools I've ever seen. And unlike tech schools in civilian world, in a civilian tech school, you think you're in charge. You think you don't have to listen sometimes. In a military tech school, you got to listen. You're not in charge. You got to learn it, and they hold you to a higher standard there. And quite frankly, when you have to have your uniform right and your haircut right and you're squared away when you walk in the door of a tech school, that's a little different than most tech schools in the nation right now, anywhere. So I think that was massively important. And then the other thing is they do an awful lot of mentoring and hands-on work in the military. So you're put with people who've been in the field for a while, and they expect you to learn things, and you're constantly tested, and you're constantly ongoing education is what I'll say. And I can tell you that one of the big problems with technicians, as I see as a whole, they learn by experience, but they don't keep up with a lot of the changes unless they find them in the field.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. They push you physically and mentally. I wasn't in, but read a lot about even West Point when they take all there's no communication, definitely not cell phones, but you can't even get a phone call for, I don't know if it's a month or a few months at a time, but they're trying to break you. Because a lot of people wash out, they quit. Even if you make it through the program, you still very well not make it through, but they're always pushing you mentally and physically. And in the civilian world, you're usually not living on the property. You're not there full time. You get to go home and be one with the world. Whereas in the Navy, you go to bed when they tell you to go to bed. And when you wake up, you do the things that they tell you to do. So you're getting on that schedule. And we had our repair tech that was on our team. He was in the Navy as well. And he was always on time. He drank the most beer when we went out of town, but he was definitely the first one up, the first one to help, the most organized. And I think that there's tons of life lessons in there.
And drank more coffee than anybody else.
I think so.
Probably.
Yeah.
The other thing is you say drink more beer. You know, that's one of the things you learn is you really become a man when you can drink all at night and show up for work at 6:30 a.m. and beyond.
I agree.
Right.
I agree. I don't know how he did it. Man, outdrink everybody and be the one up at 6 a.m. Be like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Crazy.
We want to thank Pentair for supporting the show. You know, as a podcast for pool professionals, we know that when you sell products, it's your reputation on the line. And when they are Pentair products, it's theirs as well. That's why Pentair's got your back with their trade grade program, which supports your business and reputation by offering exclusive tools and support for lead generation, attractive product rebates and longer warranties, and an unmatched expertise when it comes to accurate equipment selection, setup, and service. So to learn more about how trade grade protects, empowers, and helps your business grow, visit pentair.com/trade grade. That's pentair.com/trade grade, or click the link below.
So we've never had somebody on the show to talk about hot tubs specifically. So we're excited to jump in kind of hot tubs 101. So maybe you can just kind of break down what a hot tub is exactly.
Well, I can tell you what it isn't. It isn't a little swimming pool. And quite frankly, that's how it's approached most of the time. And if you look at most of the regulations and requirements by cities and states for commercial tubs, they treat it like a miniature swimming pool. But a spa, the difference is it's a completely self-contained system. You're dealing with a whole lot less water. And so we've often said that the contamination in a spa with 4 people in a spa is the equivalent of 100 people in a 30,000 gallon swimming pool. You know, it's a lot of contamination. And everybody that gets in there puts a pint of sweat in. The other thing that you're dealing with is you're dealing with higher pressures, and you're dealing with 100 times more plumbing. I mean, you got a few jets in a pool and a run of plumbing, but in a spa, you've got 300 feet of plumbing and 100 holes in the shell and 500 glue joints. And so there's a whole lot more places to go wrong. The other thing that you're dealing with is, to my knowledge, not many pools are as intricate in their circuitry and their circuit boards as a spa is. You know, they don't come on 3 or 4 times a day. You can't program them to come on the middle of next week or October 7th, 2021. You know, it's a spa has you set filter cycles. I even have on my spa, I even have a light cycle that my exterior light comes on at 9 o'clock at night for an hour to make people think I'm home or in the tub. There's a lot more wiring involved in a hot tub too, because with all of the extras, the lighting and stereos occasionally, you have a spaghetti plate full of wires in there or low voltage, but you also are bringing in 110 and 220. So oftentimes you can get away without a neutral wire in a pool. You can't in a hot tub. Well, you can, as long as all your components can run on 220. Basically, there are 2 major systems in spas. One is high flow, one is low flow. And a high flow system is probably the most prevalent, and it's typically a bimetal heater in a large tube, and the jet pump runs on low speed, moving a lot of water through it and through the filter system to heat and filter. As a whole, above ground or portable spas started in the 70s, and the biggest people who were doing them at the time were doing low flow. And low flow was they put in a small circulation pump that only drew about 0.98 amps. and that did all your heating and filtering, although they had a filter on the jet pump. So once a day, you would turn the spa on manually for 10 minutes. It had a clean button or a clean cycle, and you'd hit that button and it would clean up. And it was really smart because that 0.98 amps was like leaving a light bulb on most of the time. What progressed was motors got better and they got more efficient. And so with that system, you would turn over every drop of water in the spa 15 to 20 times a day, unless you hit the clean button, and that'd give you a few more gallons a day through the filter. But when jet pumps got better, they went from 3 or 4 amp draw on low speed to 1 amp or 1.2 amp draw on low speed. And instead of turning all the water over in the spa through the filter system and heater 20 times a day, now you're between 80 and 100 times a day. And you're still not really increasing your amp draw much. So that was smart. A lot of people still do the small circ pump, and they do it for the biggest reason they do it, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, is to use ozone or a sanitization system. And the sanitization system is needing to constantly be fed into it. So when water sets for hours, it can get stagnant. Right. And you had asked me about the scum line that you see on top of the water, that brown line, and it may be nasty to call it a scum line or a calcified line. But when your spa is off or you're on low flow, typically you're not breaking the surface tension of the water. And so about an inch of water is starting to collect oils and dead skin and hair and whatever else. Your burned up chemicals, your total dissolved solids start to collect on top of the water. And when you hit that jet pump button, it pulls down into the filter and it breaks the surface tension of the water. So that scum line is more prevalent the longer you leave your spa without filtering and the longer you leave it without hitting the jet pumps or turning on a high flow system to pull the water into the filter. It's also, it can also be with, like I said before, in you guys' area where everybody's using suntan lotion or lotions. It can be where in a family with 5 girls where their hair's getting in the water all the time. Right. That'll also give you a foam really bad.
Yeah. So as far as the scum line goes, what do you do to kind of get rid of that or help with that?
More filtration, pulling more water off the surface of the spa. If you look at the balanced filtration in a spa, typically you're pulling from the top and the bottom, and some only pull from the top because that will pull the water off the surface of the water, or pull the oils off the surface of the water and down into the filter. Keeping your filters clean more often, and enzymes can break down the oils better. So if you have a constant scum line and you're filtering enough and you're pulling enough water off of the top layer or off the surface, then you probably need to add enzymes to break down because oils are being introduced. And in a spa, and I know they do it in a pool too, but we deal an awful lot with organics and minerals. And so when people call me up and say my water's green, I'll always ask, can you see the bottom of the spa? Right. No. So it's probably organic. You know, if you can't see it, it's probably mineral. You just have you have minerals cleating in the spa. Mm-hmm. Or rusting, basically, I tell them.
Right. How do you get rid of the scum? You say baking soda would work for that? If you
to actually take down the line?
Yeah, to get rid of the line
baking
as well.
soda, or sometimes I'll actually use granular chlorine and just scrub it a little bit. But the first thing I'll do is overfill it and put enzymes in it and let it set for a little bit. And then I'll go back and I mean, unless I can rub it off. If I can rub it off while I'm there, I'm going to do it. If it's a really difficult one, I will use baking soda to scrub around it with a little scouring pad of some kind. Nothing that'll scratch that acrylic, because that acrylic will scratch.
Right.
A lot of people started selling the granular acrylic, or the quartzites is what we called them, that look like stone. They started selling that, and their sales pitch was, it doesn't scratch as easy as the smooth acrylic. Well, it scratches exactly as easy. You just don't notice it as much. So it's the same material. It absolutely scratches as easy. It's just doesn't show up because it's not shiny and bright and sheeny. Right. So you got to be careful what you scrub that with. The worst one I've had in the last couple of years was I got a layer of something all across the top foot of the water that was just atrocious. I could not get rid of it. And what I wound up doing was, again, overfill the water a little bit, and I used some acid magic and poured it in around the side of the spa and let it set for all around the outside edge or the inside edge of the spa, and let it set for about 15 minutes, and then started scrubbing, and it all came off. And then I had to drain the water because it was basically caustic at that point.
Right.
That's one of the benefits that we have that you guys in the pool industry don't have, is if all else fails, we can drain a spa with a drain pump in 15 minutes or less, and we can refill it and be out of there. You can't drain a pool that quick.
Right, for sure. But you never recommend any like soaps or anything, right, to clean any of that?
No, because then you start getting soap suds, and for some reason, people freak out with soap suds. They'll say, I can't stand this. You got to get it out of here. I'm going, it's not going to hurt you. It's foam. I tell people, even their swimsuits that they use in a spa, first off, I tell them to use only one swimsuit for the spa. The spa will eventually ruin your swimsuit. The heat and the chemicals will destroy the swimsuit. And so just use one swimsuit for that. And then if you can, rinse it and hang it. Don't wash it in a commercial detergent. But if you need to wash it in a detergent, use something natural. I used to years ago recommend Amway. Now there's a ton of natural detergents out there.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning of the journey of buying a hot tub for the homeowner. And I know, you did sales as well, right?
Right.
So if somebody is coming into, say, a store to buy a hot tub, why do they want a hot tub exactly? And how are you helping them choose the right one? Because there's different sizes, there's different models, there's all kinds of different things going on in a hot tub. So can you walk us through what that journey looks like from when the homeowner kind of makes their mind up that they want this? What exactly do they want it for, and how do you get them into the right one?
So I'll often ask, what are you trying to accomplish buying a tub? Do you have a medical need for it? Do you need therapy? Is someone recommending it for therapy, or are you just looking for relaxation, or are you looking for both? And 99.9% of the people say both. And so when I'm talking to them, I think I said this to you guys before, you can be the most brilliant person in the spa industry and a customer won't care, because it goes to nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you haven't questioned them down and found out what their lifestyle is like, how many people are in their family, where they're going to put the spa, how often they're going to use it, you don't go to start recommending. And I've watched salespeople turn a sales presentation into an argument. A whole bunch of second-time spa users or people who've had a friend with a spa always think they want to get a two-person spa. I just want a 2-person. I don't want to deal with the maintenance. I don't want to deal with all that water that I did before. And so I'll question them down and I'll let them vent. And then I'll say, okay, well, first off, it's easier to keep a large spa heated and clean than a small spa. The larger the body of water, the less you contaminate it. The larger the body of water, the less the temperature changes drastically. So when you get in a 2-person spa at 98 degrees, you're 98 degrees, and the spa is 104, it's going to try and achieve your heat. You're the biggest thing in there. When you get into a spa and put a pint of sweat in it and it's 100 gallons, well, if it's 500 gallons, that pint of sweat's going to have a whole lot less effect. And so the size of a spa is typically bigger in my mind than in a customer's mind. I have to sell them on that. Unless they're absolutely restricted in space, I try and get them to buy the biggest spa that they can. Budget's always a concern, but it's more of a concern when they're thinking that it's a luxury. And when you sell it for the benefits of sleep and healing and not to get off on a tangent, Christian or anything else, but the Bible never said run to the corner pharmacy. It said go to the spa, go to the bath, and soak in it. So for thousands of years, we've used spas for healing. And so when you sell that to a customer and then you explain the need for them to be in it every day, you stand a better chance of them using it. I hear people tell me all the time, oh, my friend had a spa and they never used it. And I said, I'll bet they had an exercise bike too, and they had clothes hanging on it. So size, as far as relaxation, when people come in and tell me they want 100 jets in a spa, I'll say, why do you want 100 jets in a spa? I want a really good massage. I'll say, okay, well, you've got, at the most, typically it's 2 pumps. Some have 3. I've even seen them with 4. But when you have 100 jets sharing 2 pumps, you got to think logically that you're not going to have as much power per jet. So 20 jets is a great number. 30 may be better. 40 to 50 is just on the edge of that. Outside of that, I'm not a huge fan of dumping a ton of jets in a spa. It's more holes, more glue joints, more fittings, more plumbing, just to create issues. The other thing that you've got to look at is look at their size. So one of the hardest things to fit is when a 6'6" guy comes in with a 4'11" girl.
Right.
So we want a spa for us. Well, now you got to find something that'll fit both of them. Women are more buoyant than men, and I typically don't explain why because I don't want to get hit. But yeah, they have buoyancy things, and so you got to take that into account, and you've got to typically explain to them. I really do have to explain to them at times why they're more buoyant and why they float. And typically a woman will say, oh yeah, every time I get in a spa, I float out. I got to tell you, if my wife didn't get in my spa I love my spa. I get in it many times, 2 times a day. I get it in the morning, I get in it at night. And there's times I can't sleep at night if I don't get in it. I will tell you, if my wife didn't get in it with me, I wouldn't get in it hardly at all, because it's a great place for us to sit and talk and relax and connect. And it gives me therapy. So if you don't sell to both people in the buying cycle there, you're going to have unhappy customers in the end. And you got to find something that fits them both, is comfortable for them both. Filtration's a big deal. And I see people put 5 and 6 filters in a spa. Personally, I find that a little crazy. 2 filters will filter a spa perfectly well. Does mine absolutely wonderful. You have to know if it's going, let's say, to a cabin. We talked about bromine versus chlorine and salt, and I'm not a huge fan of bromine. But if I'm doing a spa that I'm maintaining, I can do a better job with bromine than most customers. And so if it's going to a cabin, I'm probably going to put bromine or salt in it. I'm probably not going to use chlorine. Chlorine will do its job and then it'll go away. At least the chlorine we use in spas. You use trichlor, we use dichlor. We typically don't use a stabilizer in our chlorine because in the hot water, the stabilizer becomes a little caustic. So find out what kind of a system they need for sanitization. Find out how many people are going to use the spa. If they have 6 people in a spa and they're buying a 4-person spa, it doesn't work well.
And are they aware of how much service this thing is going to need? Because I feel like a lot of people that buy a hot tub think that they can take care of it themselves forever. And I think some probably can. But what is your thought on that?
So, no, people are not aware. And I don't want to say how much service. I would rather say the type of service needed on a spa. So, the people that are afraid of service on a spa are probably afraid because they overdo it. They are constantly adjusting it. They're constantly fretting over it, and it's never right. And the people who don't do as much service or have us do the service on it, the maintenance on it, are happy because there's less working on it, less doing anything on it. And so, no, they're not aware, but salespeople do oftentimes 2 things wrong. And sometimes service techs do too, but usually not. Usually a service tech will scare them to death. We had the conversation that service techs like to work with things, not people. And that could probably change too. But anyhow, the salespeople will often sell a spa as, oh no, it takes care of itself. You don't need to do anything.
Yep.
And that's not true. It's like salt systems. I have sat in showroom after showroom listening to salespeople say, you really want salt because you never have to do anything. No, if you do nothing and your alkalinity gets really low and the water becomes acidic, salt's going to be more caustic than anything.
Right.
So the reality is you have to be realistic with them on what the maintenance is. I tell people if you're working on it 15 minutes a week, you're probably okay. If you're doing an hour a month on some spas, you might be okay. But you got to do something with it. And I'll often give them a bottle of test strips, and it's got 10 test strips in it. I'll get the small bottles and give them a bottle of 10, or I can give them 50. And I'll say, here's how many test strips are in here. If I come back in a month and they're all gone, you're grounded from testing your spa anymore because you're overreacting on it. And so the maintenance, and the other thing that scares people, again, unlike a pool, because a spa is typically above ground, or above ground spas are, and you have a cover on it, and the cover's building condensation on the side, and the cover's dripping. I can't tell you over the years how many people have called me freaking out because their spa is leaking and it's the cover dripping condensation when seasons change. So you have to explain all those things. My dad used to say, tell them what you're going to sell them, and then tell them what you sold them. and that's how you need to sell a spa to a customer. So first you got to question down what they need and what they want. Sell to their highest need. That's the best thing I can say is sell to their highest need. And if somebody is constantly saying it's too big and they have plenty of room, size isn't the problem, money is. If somebody is saying, I don't think it'll fit, typically it's size is the issue. If they're saying, I don't want all that water, they're scared of maintenance. So you got to have a maintenance conversation with them. The other thing that you've got to explain to them is if you sell a spa to them, I found years ago, I sold a really high-end spa, and the factory sales presentation was selling it as a Rolls Royce. And I also sold a inexpensive spa line with it, alongside it, and I sold it as a Ford or Chevy. When I sold the Ford and Chevy spa, if I had a problem with it, people would call me up and say, hey, I got something going on. Can you come out? Yeah. If I sold the Rolls Royce spa, I would get a call saying, I knew I couldn't trust you on this thing. I knew this thing was going to break. I need you out here right now. And at some point, they're going to get you to haul it away. or whatever. So when you're selling it as a Rolls Royce and you're telling them they're never going to have an issue with it, and they do have an issue, you messed up. When you're selling it as a Ford or a Chevy, or selling it that it needs some work, you're going to have to do some maintenance. Customers only complain about buying a cover every couple years for $400 or $500 when you don't explain to them that they're putting tires on their car around the same time for $1,000. If you tell them that's going to happen, they're more likely going to say, hey, I think it's time to replace my cover. Can you order me one?
Right. Thank you.
Hey, Pool Chasers. Obviously, we're talking hot tubs today. But did you know there's a magazine completely dedicated to the topic? Well, there is. So if you're interested in learning more about selling or servicing hot tubs, check out Spa Retailer magazine. From the same people who bring you Pool Pro magazine, Spa Retailer dives into everything you need to run a successful spa business. In fact, our guest today, Robert Stuart, has been a long-time columnist for the magazine. So go to sparetailer.com to learn more and buy a subscription. Pool Chasers listeners can get an extra 25% off a magazine subscription by using the code CHASERS at checkout. And don't forget to check out the next issue of Pool Pro, where they announce this year's 30 under 40 pool professionals.
All of that being said, let's jump into service. So if a company wants to get hot tubs set up on regular service, get them on a schedule, what are your recommendations for taking care of them properly? And maybe we could just start from the beginning, because this is something that we started taking on when we had our service company, and we didn't do a very good job at it. And then we stopped doing it. And then we figured out that you can actually make some really good money with these, because you get them on a drain schedule and cleaning their filters. And we actually outsourced another company to do repairs and things like that on them. Maybe you could just walk us through the basics from, taking these on and getting them on schedule.
So I like to get customers buy-in on the spa service. And when I say that, I want them to test it occasionally. I want them to throw something in occasionally. And part of that is I want to be there to help and get paid to help. But at the same time, I don't want to be to blame for everything that happens. Spas are a lot more volatile than a pool. A lot more things change more often on a spa. A perfect maintenance schedule for me is twice a month, and I try and get them to let me drain it every 3 months. But that's expensive. I mean, that can run you. I try and figure, for every drain and fill I do in a maintenance schedule, I try and figure between $100 and $150 in for the drain and fill. I try and make on a maintenance schedule where I can stop and check the water and move on. I try and figure a $50 trip there. And I'm not charging it that way. So depending on how many trips I take, I'll figure it in between $40 and $50 a trip. So if I've got a route, I can even get down below that. If I'm doing a route where a lot of the mountain towns, the tech will go to all the commercial areas in a route, then he'll go hit a neighborhood in a route. And that way you can share the cost in it. But if I have to go with one customer, I have a customer here in town that I've maintained for years, and he's one of the highest end attorneys in town and lives in a $4 million house and has a Ferrari and the most expensive Jaguar you can get, had a Lamborghini at one time. He said, I want to see you every week. And quite frankly, if I'm going to do a weekly thing, I'm going to make money on it, because if I have to go to you every week, it's stopping me from other service that I can make money on. And if I can make, let's say I can make $500 on a heater, gasket, and union change, between $300 and $500, or I can change a manifold, which a lot of people cringe at. I love changing manifolds. If I can change a manifold and make $600 to $1,200 depending on the manifold, I don't want to go to your house for $35. I want to make money on it. So if you're a larger company and you have someone just handling chemical maintenance, that's okay. It doesn't take a lot to teach somebody how to do just the chemical maintenance. It's harder to teach somebody how to do the service. Most people want to drain a spa every 6 months. Again, I like to sell them on every 3 months if I can. There's nothing better than clean water, nothing better than a fresh fill. And again, in the pool business, that's probably not true with you guys because then you got a lot of balancing to do.
That's still the
I,
best. It's still the best remedy if you can do it, But yeah, you can do
yeah.
it more
And
often and quicker
and
and
it also
more
depends
beneficial.
and it also depends on how often they're using it. If this is a brand new spa that you're taking on and you've got a CRM in place where you're making notes of the manufacturer of the spa, you've gone through your checklist of things, you've asked them how often do you use this, how many people use it, all those different types of things, because you can very well lose a customer because you're not being honest and you're wanting to do something every couple months when they told you that they don't ever use it, but it needs to be taken care of because they have people that
Right.
come in from out of town every so often. And I'm just talking logical right now. We're talking about humans that
Yeah.
want you to be honest with them on that, but I definitely agree with all of that.
Well, I saw a commercial years ago. I sadly I can't even tell you what the commercial was on, but the commercial, the contractor's talking to a woman in her kitchen and says, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to knock that window out. We're going to knock that wall out. Then we're going to disappear for 2 weeks. You won't be able to get in touch with us. You're going to think we dropped off the face of the earth and you're going to get scared. We're going to come back in 2 weeks and we're going to make it look better than you ever dreamed and you're going to love us. And at the bottom of the screen, it says blatant honesty.
Mhm.
I love that because, two things happen. I think as a whole, especially techs, they want the customer to be as informed as the customer can be. But after you've repeated yourself time after time after time, I've sat and listened to salespeople on the floor and they said, this spa comes with ozone, it's got 20 jets, and they just keep going. Well, that customer knows nothing about ozone. They've never heard of it. It may be the thousandth time you've said that in a month, you've talked about ozone. It's the first time they're ever hearing it.
Right.
So take a minute and tell them what ozone does. Take a minute and tell them what salt does. Tell them how it works.
Yeah.
And if you don't get credit for it, somebody else will. That's just how it works.
Right.
So one of the things that is rarely shared with a customer and should be shared every time they buy a new spa. You brought this up a second ago. When they get a new spa, you need to explain to them in the first few months, this spa is going to get dirty quicker than at any other time. And the reason is first off, everybody's excited. They're getting in it with suits that have never been used in the spa. They have never soaked in a spa. And so they've collected oils and waxes in their skin that an hour soak in a tub will take out. If you're soaking every day in a tub, you're going to get it less dirty than if you jump in it one time every 3 months. And I don't care how much you scrub with soap, your pores will collect stuff. The other thing is that spa has things from the factory, dust and silicone tailings and things like that, that's going to start coming out of the pipes in the first few months. And the factories, when they water test, they don't put fresh water in every spot of water test. They dump it from one to another to another to another. So there's some nasty water going in there. And so I explained to customers in the first few months, it's going to be dirtier than it'll ever be, but it'll just keep getting better and you'll learn more about it.
Yeah, that's really good. Back to the maintenance thing. What's typically done kind of on a chemical maintenance check? What do you recommend doing?
So some of this sounds weird because it's just how I think, but when I walk in, you've got a lot of senses. Use them all. Don't just use your knowledge. Use all your senses. When I walk into a backyard and start walking up to a spa, I listen to if it's running. I listen to what it sounds like. If it's not running, I turn it on and listen to what it sounds like. If that spa sounds like it's laboring, I pull the filters out and see what it sounds like. I want to know if something's stuck in the pump. I want to know if they've had the filters out and ran the jets with the filters out and sucked something down into it. When silver was a big thing to sell, a silver stick, a frog system or a nature 2 system was a big thing to sell in spas. they had a little tail that went on the end of that silver stick. And I pulled more of those out of motors and out of plumbing than you could ever imagine.
Wow.
I pulled toys out. I've pulled everything out of an impeller. I don't even want to explain some of the things I've pulled out. But so I listen. The second thing I do is I smell it. And I've got a pretty good sense of smell. I can walk in the backyard and the spa smells musty from 20 feet away. If you're paying attention to that, you'll know. But one of the first things that I notice is if I smell burning, electrical burning or electrical arcing, I open the control panel, I open up the box, and I get down close to it. If it's stronger down there, I want to look at that board. I want to know if their heater relay is sticking, and then I want to question the customer about it. And of course, I'm going to test the water chemistry. I'm going to change or clean the filters. I like to have customers with a second set of filters. And if they have a second set of filters, a lot of times I'll take those filters back with me and clean them and bring them back with me. My guy I see every week, I keep a second set of filters for him all the time. And when I go down, I just swap the filters out and then I bring them back and rinse them out. Super easy. I don't have to spend a lot of time with it. I can grab a cup of coffee and stand in my yard with a filter clean, spin and clean, and a pressure washer and clean 100 filters in a couple hour in an hour. So, and then I when I test the water and I listen to the spa run, I put the filters back, the clean filters back in, and if the spa starts laboring, then I know that there's something also could be blocking or in the line. One of the things people never do, or techs never do, maintenance guys never do, is they never turn the light on and off. Turn the light on. Check the jets. When you add water chemistry and you're waiting for a couple minutes to see if it, or to see how much it changed, turn on all the jets and walk around and feel them all. See if they're turning on. Worst thing you can do is go to somebody's house and have them call you back and say, one of my jets isn't working. It was working when you were here. No, it wasn't, but I checked them all and found one that wasn't working and I fixed it. You tell that to a customer, you're a hero.
Right.
I do weird things. I will fix a gate latch on a customer's gate when I'm there. It takes me 5 minutes and say, got the spa running good. I had to change a couple jets and I fixed the gate latch on your gate.
Damn, that's impressive.
They love that. They absolutely love that. So the biggest thing is keep your eyes, ears, and nose open and check all functions. Don't just check one. Walk around the spa and look to see if you see calcified water trails. If you're looking up against the spa where the panel bolts to the spa, and behind that panel you see water trails coming down the kickboard and it's not wet, you know it has been leaking. And another thing that I always do, and a lot of people don't, I always open the equipment compartment. If I'm out there for a chemistry test, I open the equipment compartment and I check to see if I see leaks around the pumps or heater. Always. And I check the flow switch. If I have to pull the box open and look at the flow switches are one of the most common leaks in a spa. They get attacked with water chemistry faster than anything. So I look at that.
Yeah. What are you documenting when you first see one of these, and what video and photos are you capturing just that first time? Because we did talk about the manufacturer, the model number of the hot tub, and all these different things. So you're seeing one of these for the first time. What is all the information that you should be getting from this?
I take a picture of the spa setting, where it's setting. I open the equipment compartment and I take a picture of the equipment and the plumbing that I can see in the equipment compartment. And I take a picture of the manufacturer's plate or label with the serial number. And then oftentimes I will take a picture of the cover. If I see a dent, chip, or scratch in the spa, I'll take a picture of that. I don't want to be blamed for it. And oftentimes I'll take a picture of their electrical disconnect. So if they have a GFCI, that's the other thing I do when I'm out there is I test the GFCI to see if it's working. It's covering your tracks. You got to cover your tracks. When somebody calls you back and says, there's a scratch in my spa that wasn't here before you came out, you say, no, I've actually took a picture of that. I can show you it was there. Or my GFCI doesn't work now, or my spa isn't working now. Yeah, I get that because I tried to test the GFCI and your GFCI is shorting out. You need to have an electrician come out. Or if I push the button on the GFCI and it doesn't trip, I will call the customer and say, hey, you need to get a electrician out, or sometimes I'll change the GFCI for them, but I'll say you need to get a electrician out and change that. I can't have my techs or I work on the spa without protection. And then I explain what a GFCI does. And I try and document everything that I can. And I think it's really important. If the pad is off level, I try and document that. I'll look at the water level and take a picture of it, how much off level it is. One of the things I just did a $400 leveling job for a customer I've had for years. I had taken a picture a few years back of her spa looked a little or pretty much off level. And I took a picture of it recently and compared the two, and it had gone out of level a full inch and a half more. And she kept complaining about it going into OH mode. Well, it was going into OH mode because the filters were going dry when it was still full on the other end. And I said, here's a picture from when I was out there 2 years ago, and here's a picture from now. That pad needs to be, you need to have a pad level set up, and either we can do it or you can call a handyman, but that's got to happen. I can't guarantee anything on the spa until that happens.
Right. And do you have a certain type of tool where you're testing the temperature of the water to see if making sure that the heat temp sensor is actually working?
Great question. That's probably one of the most important questions a tech can ask. So I've seen tons of techs with meters that don't have amp clamps. You can't tell how that spa is heating without an amp clamp. You can, but you'll never be effective at it. And so before I leave a house, when I test the GFCI and I turn it back on, I let it go through a power on reset, go through the POR, go through the purge cycle, and I wait the 5 minutes for, on some, like a Balboa pack is 5 minutes to go through a purge cycle. And I'll clamp my amp clamp to it and just sit and watch what happens. On most of the Balboa packs, I know that it's going to kick on the heater after 5 minutes. It's going to kick on the pumps. It's going to kick on the heater. I can see the amp draw on the pumps. I already know what the amp draw is because I've got a picture of the label of the pumps also. And so I know what the amp draw should be, and I see what it is on my meter. And then when the heater kicks on, I want to see a marked difference in that heating element, in the amp draw. And you can't do that without an amp clamp.
And how does that, is that just a tool that you clamp?
The meter with a clamp on it that you set to an amperage draw selection, and you clamp it to one of the incoming power wires in front of the board, and you watch it. And when the pumps come on low, they typically, depending if both of them come on or one comes on, they'll turn on anywhere from 1 amp to 3 amps. Sometimes they're a big motor, they'll go more. When they go on high, they can go 10 to, well, they'll when they first kick on, they can spike clear up to 30 to 50 amps, just that first few seconds. That's why you have slow blow fuses on the board and things like that. After you read that and you wait for the heater to kick on, your heater should bring your amp draw up to anywhere from 15 to 22 amps. When that kicks on, you know it's working. If you hear the relay for the heater kick on and you don't see an amp draw difference, then you take and switch it to voltage test on 220, and you put it to each leg of the heater, And if you have 220 across that heater and you're not drawing any amperage, their heater's shot. They need a new element. If you don't have 220 across both those, your flow switch could be bad. And one of the tricky things that happens on spas with flow switches is oftentimes you'll get out there, the spa's running, it's hot, the heater's on, you turn it off and back on, and the heater doesn't kick on. And you're trying to figure it out. Well, you knew it was heating a minute ago. So you turn it on high, all of a sudden the heater kicks on and starts working. That means that flow switch is either dirty or just slightly out of adjustment.
Yeah. And is that one of the more frequently asked questions that you get, is that the spa isn't heating up, or they just think that something is off on there?
A lot of times people will call me and say it's not heating. And honestly, 99% of the time when they tell me their spa isn't heating, I will say, did you just drain it and fill it? Well, yeah, I did. Oh, or when's the last time you pulled your filters or cleaned them? About 60% of the time, they always tell me they're clean filters. If they say they're clean filters and not, I just changed them, I'll say, okay, do me a favor, just humor me. Pull the filters out, turn the power off, pull the filters out, wait a couple minutes, turn power back on, wait 5 minutes and see if it starts heating, or wait an hour and see if it's increasing in temperature. And that fixes it most of the time. That's my biggest call, is people are dirty filters, low water, or just change their water and they have an airlock. Or a big one that I see oftentimes now is they drained it all the way, they sucked out all the water with a shop vac, they sucked the heater dry, they turned it on before it was full, and the heater dry fired and burned out the heater.
Yeah. I hear you talk about the filters quite a bit. Is that almost like a car where, you can really, your equipment is going to last a lot longer with not as much maintenance, like replacing the heater or something like that, if you just clean the filters as often as possible?
Those filters are the kidney of your spa. It's how your kidneys work. If your kidneys weren't working, you wouldn't be filtering anything. Hence, you couldn't drink beer. So the filters have to be working, or have to be allowing flow to allow the heater to kick on. And that brings up another question, just to bounce back a second on high flow and low flow. There are companies out there that use a low flow pump just for heating, and it's got its own filter. And then they have a larger filter for the jet pumps. And the reason that they do that is because they put a small micron filter to filter out as much stuff as they possibly can. I'm a personal believer that below 20 microns is stupid. You could filter anything with 20 microns that would hurt you in a spa. A lot of water filters, drinking water filters, are 20 microns.
Right.
But people oftentimes will go to 0.1 or 0.2 micron. All that does is you're just changing filters more often.
Right.
But the filters really matter. So I've got one brand of spas, including the one that I have here at home. And I really don't want to get into brands, because if they listen to this podcast, they're going to say I didn't talk about them nicely, or I didn't give them enough attention. But I've got one brand that come from the factory with 50 micron filters, or 50 square foot filters, not 50 micron, but 50 square foot. Those 50 square foot filters, giving you a total of 100 square foot with 2 filters, get dirty really quick. I put in 25s or 30 square foot filters in the same spa, still stays just as clean, and they get a lot more flow out of it. And if they don't rinse their filters every month, they're okay. They can do it every 2 months.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the filters are very important, and I think people definitely don't understand the value in changing them or replacing them, like you were talking about. So appreciate you sharing all of that. You know what I hear, when you're your checklist of things you go through when you service, it definitely validates for me, at least hearing, that you're charging $40 to $50 a visit, because, when we were doing some of these things on our pool maintenance route, we would charge like $5 extra or $10 extra a visit, but we weren't doing nearly any of those things. I mean, it was just more like a chemical check. So I've learned a lot already from you, but I just think like when you are talking about that intensive of a service checklist, like it definitely justifies charging for that and charging for the expertise.
Yeah, if I charge enough to spend 20 to 30 minutes on site, I'm going to spend 20 to 30 minutes on site.
Right. Well, that just makes sense. I mean, we didn't do nearly any of those things when we were servicing above ground spas. So, it may sound like a lot if you're listening to this, but when you do all that, it's definitely justifying the price point and the expertise that they're paying for. So
Absolutely. And that whole deal with senses that I was talking about adds into the filter thing that you were talking about, or you were asking about. So one of the calls I went on a couple years ago, I went out to the guy's house and he said, I just cleaned my filters and they're the right size filter and I know everything's working and I've got power out of the jets. Well, I go out there and the first thing, it sounds like the spa's laboring a little bit, not much, just a tiny bit. So the first thing I do is pull the filters and it's not laboring as bad, but I'm still getting a flow error, which is probably my number one error, is not enough flow. I'm thinking there's something stuck in the motor. So I take the motor apart or open it up and look in the impeller. There's nothing stuck in it. So I turn it on and I hear kind of a buzz when I first turn it on. So I take a flashlight and I look down in the filter hole and there's something black, and I take a long pair of needle nose and pull whatever it is black out. And I call the guy up and I said, what kind of a phone do you have? He said, I don't know. I said, is it a Bell South phone in your house? He said, yeah, I think it is. I said, is the back missing off of it? He said, the battery compartment, it is. I said, yeah, it was in your filter compartment.
Wow. That's crazy.
So what are some of the different financial opportunities, that are available when taking care of a hot tub? Some people might not have any idea that you can make any money in hot tubs, but I think you'd be mistaken in thinking that. So maybe you could just go over what some of those are, even including somebody might be wanting a new hot tub or selling people that don't have one, but you take care of their pool on one. Maybe you could just go over some of the different opportunities that are there.
Well, I think that the biggest opportunity is incentivizing techs to sell accessories or other backyard items. If you sell other backyard items, I mean, if I go in a backyard and I see their patio furniture destroyed by our last windstorm, I will say, bummer, what happened to your patio furniture? Oh, got destroyed by the last windstorm. We got to get some more. Hey, we've got some great stuff. Let me measure this. Hey, here's a picture of some of it that we've got. I mean, key is we've got stuff that isn't going to blow around. Let me show you some. Or if I see a $100 Home Depot grill and it looks like it's caught on fire at least once, I'm going to say, about time to graduate to the next level of grill, isn't it? They always want to, especially if you're talking to the guy. Always. If I get into a spa and they're using bromine, I'll ask them, why are you using bromine? We tried chlorine and we didn't like it. What didn't you like about it? Well, it wasn't keeping up. In other words, you weren't adding it more often enough. Well, I can't. Have you ever looked at salt? No. Well, what you're paying for bromine, for a little more than that the first year and probably less than that in 2 years, I can put a salt generator in and it will take you a whole lot less work. The water will feel better and be cleaner. And you're basically just testing it with a test strip about once every couple weeks and adjusting your balance. They love that. And especially when I tell them it's depending on your spot, it's $400 to $1,000. But what are you going to spend in 3? If I put $1,000 unit in, you're going to spend in 3 years close to that in water chemistry and maintenance items and time. I used to teach a sales course where I told people, when you're talking to baby boomers, save them time, save them money, or make them look better, or make them healthier. You do one of those four things, you've got them on the hook.
I like that.
So,
And how difficult is it to install salt generator on a hot tub?
it's not. Granted, if you're running a high flow system, you may have to put a circulation pump in to feed the salt in on some of the systems. I'm not personally a big fan of the systems that go down in the equipment compartment, because unless you install a sacrificial anode and change that sacrificial anode out occasionally, it's going to attack your heater and it's going to attack your equipment. I really am a fan of over the tub salt generators that generate the salt in the bather load. I'm a big fan of that, because that salt has done its conversion and gone back to salt before it goes down to your equipment. And really, the chlorine does more damage than the salt. So if your equipment is where it's constantly feeding new chlorine in, it's going to damage that equipment. But if it's in the bather load where it's not getting a big dose of it, and quite frankly, most people are really happy with that. And that's a cure that I can do in 15 minutes. I've come up with a little plug-in way to, on most circuit boards, to plug in 110 power on a circuit board and put a 110 GFCI box in there and plug a 110, plug their plug-in in for the salt generator in right there. And so they'll have a cord coming up, but very little of it shows.
Right.
Or I give them a good, better, best. So good, I can do for $300 to $400. I can put a salt generator that hangs over the side, and it takes me 15 minutes to install. Better is I can put one down in the equipment area, and the generator will come on with your low speed pump. It's a little harder on your equipment that way, but I can do that. Best is I can install a 24-hour circ pump and a loop and a sacrificial anode, and it will be the Cadillac of it. It'll do more than what the others will do. Still has the potential for needing replaced now and then, but you don't see anything, and it's doing its job without you having to interact at all.
Okay. So what are some of the other things that, you can make some money? I mean, besides service, what are some other things? Because you talked about covers, pillows. Is there any other accessories and things like that you can sell?
Well, I didn't talk about pillows, but that's great that you brought that up, because pillows are something, especially if they're using bromine, that always need replaced. So if you're doing maintenance on the spa and you see those pillows discolored, you don't ask the customer, would it be good if I ordered you pillows? Are you okay with that? They're about $30 a piece or $40 a piece, and you need 4 of them. No. Say, hey, I'm going to order you some pillows. Yours are deteriorating, and it's time for new pillows. And then they'll say how much? 30 to $40 a piece. Okay, we'll go ahead and order them. As far as other things you can sell, you can always sell filters, especially if you're doing maintenance, but they're cleaning their filters. Or if you're out there just for a service call, you can always sell a filter. Always sell a filter. If you're talking to a customer who is hobbling around with a bad back or bad leg, you can sell them an entry bar, a safety bar. Not hard to do. If you've got a spa with a coped lip that around the edge and there's no drink holders in it, or one drink holder, you can sell them a tray to go on the side of the tub, or a bar to go on the side of the tub. If it's a rainy area, you can sell them an umbrella. If it's a sunny area, you can sell them an umbrella. If you have a conversation with them and say, when do you get in the spa? We get in at night. Don't ever get in the daytime. I like the dark. What's really cool is I got an umbrella on mine, and that keeps the sun off me, and I enjoy that. Ooh, that sounds good. I recently started ordering solar lights. So a little solar globe that you can set in the spa or by the spa, and it's got a remote control. Carry those with me. Everybody loves them. Everybody wants one.
Yeah, I always thought it'd be cool doing like a towel delivery service as well, like with pool service, or if you're
Oh,
doing
that'd be so
spas.
cool.
I've never heard of anybody doing that, but nothing pisses me off more than I go somewhere and there's no towels anywhere. Like, oh, they're all dirty. I'm like, damn.
Right.
Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, go give me some old
I
t-shirts.
Soak
always
dry.
wanted to make a spa towel warmer, a cabinet
Ooh.
that you
There you
hang your
go.
towels in by the spa that kept them warm. Because in Colorado, you guys don't understand this where you live, but in Colorado, when you hang your towel up next to the spa and it's snowing and that snow sticks to the towel and you get out of the spa and put that cold, wet towel back on you to dry off, it's
Woo!
not fun.
Yeah.
Man, I want to put a sauna next to
There you
the
go.
I've done
dry
that a
off in
lot
a
actually. In
sauna.
fact, I've got a sauna in my house and we'll go sit in the spa or in the sauna and then go out and sit in the spa. And by the time we go to bed, we're pouring into bed and we don't wake up until morning.
For sure.
That's amazing.
Nice and relaxing.
Yeah.
And I build saunas too, so
Yeah. So is there anything else that, man, we can go on and on forever on this stuff, but I think we covered some great information where people are going to be inspired, especially this time of year, because everything is booming right now and it's starting to, we're on the home stretch and here in Arizona anyway, where it's going to start cooling down. But hopefully people aren't so intimidated by seeing a hot tub. And this episode, I think there's tons of good information in this, but was there anything else that you wanted to add before we?
yeah, one of the questions you had asked me about was when people are complaining about getting itchy or skin conditions. And I wanted to address that a little bit. I wrote an article several years ago, and I meant to share some articles with you, and I will. But I wrote an article several years ago on it. And like city and county putting regulations on a spa, treating it like a little pool, doctors don't know much about spas. They're not hot tub experts. And so we have to challenge doctors sometimes. And so when a person goes to a doctor with a skin rash or a skin issue, first thing that doctor says is you have Pseudomonas folliculitis, it's hot tub bacteria, and I see it all the time in hot tubs. Well, what that says to your customer is hot tubs are nasty. They cause disease. So one of the things I found out, and I worked with a dermatologist in Arizona who is a world-renowned dermatologist, and basically we found out that most hot tub skin rashes, for years we got into using potassium peroxymonopersulfate, which is a spa shock, standard spa shock, or MPS. And what this dermatologist brought to the forefront for me that was amazing, it was like an epiphany, is people with skin issues can't use most shampoos because they're allergic to ammonium sulfate. The sulfate in potassium peroxymonopersulfate is almost the exact same as in ammonium sulfate. Same properties, same reactions. And so when people are having skin issues, it's the persulfate affecting their skin or their follicles, not bacteria. And so simply putting them, shocking with chlorine, even if they're on a bromine system or a salt system, shocking with chlorine rather than MPS really helps in cutting back on the MPS. But as a whole, itchy skin, the number one thing I see that cures that is putting in a salt system.
Well, thank you for
Great
sharing that with
recommendation.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you share that article with us, because I'm sure that a lot of people listening to this have had customers that have had those worries and questions, and it would be really nice to actually, send them this article and then follow up with, what would really help out is having a salt generator on here. This, should help.
Right.
But at the end of the day, all of our bodies are a little bit different, so you never know. But thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
And where can people reach out to you? You have a website or anything?
I don't have a website. I actually used it less and less and less when I closed my retail store. I kind of went into I wanted to contact people, not have them contact me. but I'm kind of coming out of that. Retail will burn you out in a span of years. But I have about 8 different emails. The best way to get in touch with me is as simple as it gets, and it'll tell you how long I've been doing this. Is spaguy1, the number 1, at hotmail.com.
Ooh, gotta love that Hotmail email.
Well, it's not just that, it's spaguy1. So there was a spa guy, which Rob Neal with Watkins, whose father was one of the founders of Watkins and Hot Springs, had Spa Guy, and I had Spa Guy 1. I've had that for over 30 years.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us on the show and sharing all the information that I know that this would have been huge for us if we heard something like this, because we were just terrified of hot tubs. You open that thing up and you're just like, oh man, I don't know what the hell's going on in here. But you definitely shed a lot of light on this topic. So thank you very much.
Well, ditto. I'm glad to talk to you guys because I want somebody I can call occasionally for pools. I shied away from pools after I worked on a pool for a friend and went back a week later because he was screaming at me and it looked like a cesspool. And it was like, holy crap, what did I do?
Very good.
Thanks again for being on with us.
All right. Thanks again.
Hey, Pool Chasers. Thanks for checking out this episode. Did you know that each episode has its own page on our website? This is where you can find more information about the guest and episode topic, as well as all the resources that we discuss throughout the show. To get to the webpage, click the link below. Also below, you will find links to the sponsors of the show, as well as links to follow us on our social media channels. On our channels, you will find some of our favorite clips and bonus material. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Our tag is Pool Chasers. We also have a Facebook group for the Pool Chasers community. Here you will find like-minded professionals all looking to make each other better. One last thing. If the episode has brought you value, please check out our Patreon page to support us. And if you could please rate and review the podcast, we would love to hear what your favorite topics are. Thank you for your time and your ear.
See you out there, Pool Chasers.